Welcome, everybody, to the Rideshare Rodeo podcast. Thank you for joining us again. This is episode number 346. So thank you for joining us. I do have a guest with me today. His name is Trent. He drives in the Miami market. And not only does he do rideshare, I think, well, we'll get into this a little bit about his background and what he exactly does. Because it might be a little bit different. And right before we came on here today, I had a few minutes to speak with him, and we were talking about something that I maybe haven't talked about in a little bit here, but the fact that, he absolutely treats this like a business, whereas a lot of people on these apps are, I understand you are still an independent contractor by definition, but that is played by both sides of the side that wants you to be an employee and the side that wants you to be IC, and then the companies, they're just playing these angles. But really, to me, you're like in this purgatory, undefined space of like, am I an IC? Because I don't feel like a full IC. I don't have transparency. I don't, it's like a lot of things are missing that true ICs absolutely get all the time. So Trent, thank you for joining me today.
No, it's my pleasure.
So do you want to give us a little background on you and exactly what you do that might be a little different than what other just rideshare drivers might be doing in the Miami and Palm, the areas you're in?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Trent. I have a long history of assorted backgrounds. I started off out of college, was a Border Patrol agent. So I was in Laredo, Texas for about 4 years. After 9/11, became an air marshal. Did that for 6 years until they started getting rid of that program. Fast forward, became a hospital director, general manager of Chick-fil-A, kind of done it all. While I was working at the hospital 3 years ago, I had a stroke and was given 6 months to live, had 6 aneurysms in my brain. So basically made a choice that I wasn't working 100 hours a week anymore like I had been doing. Quit. I had always done Uber and Lyft on the side, weekends, just mostly. I love to talk, so for me, it was more about the interaction than the money. At the time, I had a pretty decent, nice BMW, so I was doing black rides here. After I had my stroke, I just decided that I was going to do Uber and Lyft until it was my time to pass away. And so fast forward about 6 months after that, I had bought a Tesla. I had bought a Model S Plaid, started driving, picked up some pretty nice clients here who was like, hey, do you do private trips? And at this time, I carried no insurance, for that type. Didn't care about the licensing. And then I started just doing some research on like, wow, Uber and Lyft is taking a lot of money. Like, you start digging into the numbers. And the way my brain works is I do everything like 10 times over. So if they're paying me $23, I'm going to dig into that and try to figure out where every penny goes. So to make a long story short, I decided to get commercial insurance, which was not cheap, but I made that, I had to go, it started off at $400 a month and then jumped to $1,100 a month and $1,300 a month.
You're gonna scare all the people out there.
Yeah, it was not easy. And I tell you, what I found out was like, I would call these people and say, hey, I need commercial insurance. And they're like, oh, no, you can't get it. You can't get it. And they're like, oh, it's called livery insurance. It's called this. In Florida, insurance is a big deal, even with houses and everything else. So it was hard. But what scared me was I called the city to see about licensing here in Palm Beach. And they told me you have to have a minimum of 7 cars to get your licensing. And then it's a $10,000 fee. And then you have to have $300,000 combined insurance on every single vehicle. And then it's about $600 a year per car for the stickers. So I was like, well, there's no way I'm doing that. That's insane. You're talking $300,000 to get started. I have a short time to live.
Was the 10,000 a one-time fee, or is that yearly?
Yeah, it's a one-time fee.
Okay.
And the thing it is here is like, it doesn't matter if you have 7 cars or 70 cars. It's the same. The only difference is you got to pay for the stickers. You have a Palm Beach sticker, a Fort Lauderdale sticker, and it's almost like a medallion, New York type of thing. Because, Palm Beach, 80% of people are New Yorkers. We call it the 6th borough. So they bring their laws and things down. And, of course, that's to protect the cab companies. It's to protect the other black car companies. So what I learned was I could actually work under somebody else's licensing here as long as I had commercial insurance. So now I pay another company $600 a month, or excuse me, a year. and I carry my own insurance, and I do 1 or 2 trips for him. He takes, gives me 30, 60, 70%, and I get to keep the license, so I can work under his license. I carry my own commercial insurance. So at that time, I printed some really nice business cards. That's one advice I give to people is, if you're going to do this, don't just skimp and buy $30 business cards. Go out and spend an extra 30, 40 bucks, because it makes a huge difference when somebody looks at your card.
Oh, sure.
And then,
but at the same time, while we're there, before we move on, would you recommend, because I always tell people, hey man, land some clients on your own. You're talking to people all day. Would 100%. You recommend that to people who, as you and I know, many don't carry the correct insurance?
Yeah, and that's
because that gets a little sticky, especially once you're
tough.
Outside of the platforms.
It is, because here, I was sitting in Fort Lauderdale. This was like when I first started. I didn't have commercial insurance, and a guy came up to me in the cell phone waiting lot, and he was like, "Hey, can you give me a ride to the bus station? I'll give you $50." And I was waiting on one of my clients at the time, and I'm like, "No, I can't do that. I can't do that." So he did it to the driver next to me. The guy took it. They arrested him. Like 3 cops pulled in, and they literally arrested the guy because he wasn't carrying proper or whatever. What I've noticed over time, as long as you don't solicit it at the airports, they're pretty lenient. But the issue always becomes if somebody hits you. And I'll give somebody else. The reason I decided to go the commercial insurance route, there was a guy I was taking to work every day. He was paying me $40 a day. Very nice guy. We became friends. Younger guy. Like, we were hanging out after work. One day we were in my Tesla. I was at a red light, and a guy bumped into me from behind. And the guy that was riding with me had already been like in a coma from a car accident before for like 2 months. And he had been hooked on pain medications and, recovering addict. So I get out of the car to check my car, and the guy was an illegal who hit me. So right away at this time, I knew I did not carry an uninsured driver. So I'm like, crap, if he did damage, I'm screwed. So he starts talking to me in Spanish, and he's apologizing. Please. There was no damage to my car, not even a scratch. But the guy was offering to pay me cash. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. The guy in the back seat goes, oh, my neck hurts. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. And I'm like, what? And he looks at the guy and tells him, how much money you got in your wallet? And the guy pulls out like $300. He goes, give me that, and my neck feels better. And so he did, and we get in the car, and he goes, you want me to split this with you? And I was like, why did you do that? Like, that's ridiculous. He goes, well, is that or sue your insurance? And
I'm taking it you didn't have a dash cam?
Not at this point, no. This is when I literally just started working. So at that point, I realized even the people who you think are your best friends, you can't trust them if there's an accident. And that guy could have ruined me if he would have sued me and made up some claim, because Florida's a no-fault state. So everybody sues everybody for everything. I mean, you can sue your own insurance. So I learned then that I have to do this with the proper insurance to protect me, right? I mean, I don't want to lose everything that I have. I have no mortgage on my house. I have this, like, at the point I didn't have an LLC. So, they could sue me personally, and I could lose everything all over somebody hitting me. So that's why I decided to do it. So I think it's up to the individual person on how they feel. But I've seen it all the time. People somebody hits you. Maybe you're a good driver, but somebody else isn't, right? So I think that's up to the person. I think the thing is with the insurance, it's more expensive, but it gives you that peace of mind if something happens. The licensing, on the other hand, can you get in trouble? Yeah, but like, if you don't have the licensing, I don't think it's that much of a big deal. It's the insurance, because you really need to protect yourself. And I've had guys tell me, they won't ticket you, cops, if you have the right insurance. If you don't have the licensing, they'll let you go. Because they don't know. They don't want to take the time to pull up the numbers on the licensing. And so I think that's what I would tell people. And I don't think commercial insurance would be that expensive in other cities, especially like rural America. I mean, here, like I started, it was $400 a month, but it also covers me when I'm just driving my personal. So I can drop my regular insurance because it covers me all the time. And sure. I was already paying $170, $180 a month. So it was just a little bit of an increase, but I know I'm protected.
Right.
So, but I started getting more personal clients, handing out cards. And then just word of mouth, like the neighbor would give the neighbor. I have Darius Butler. He's on the Pat McAfee show. He's one of my clients. I hope he doesn't care that I just said his name, but he gave my name out to a lot of people. He's a former NFL player. We became friends. So, I've had all sorts of people from Peyton Manning to, you name it. You never know in Palm Beach who you get in your car, right? I mean, I pull up one day, and I'll tell you a story. I had a Lyft one day, and the initials were MG. And I'm like, okay, I go to get this guy's bag, put it in my car, and he's like, don't touch my bags. And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. And this was like a little Best Western type hotel in the middle of a bad area. And it comes to find out it's Matt Gaetz, the congressman. And I take him to, this was 2 years ago. So I got my picture with him. We were cool. Actually, I went and had a beer with him. Like, it was just like, ended up being a cool guy, but he was so concerned about an Uber driver recognizing him or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he actually gave my card out at Mar-a-Lago. So I started driving with a lot of those people. And I just started realizing, like, I love driving. I love talking. Like, when I was diagnosed and given 6 months to live, like, I went through a lot of hardships, like trying to figure out, like, as a father, like, the most important thing is my son going to be okay when something happens? Is my wife going to be okay? And, my son's in the National Guard, so I knew everything was fine. But for me, everybody kept saying, you need to go see a therapist. You need to see a therapist. You need to see a therapist. Like, you're 47 and you're just given a life sentence. But for me, Uber and Lyft was my therapy. I could randomly talk to people I don't know, tell them about my story, and then I felt better. Like, it was like having free therapy. They didn't judge me because they didn't know me. But I actually built a lot of client bases that way. A lot of my clients today, I've been driving for 3 years, and they all know my story. 6 months after diagnosed that, I went back and 5 of my aneurysms had healed. And the doctor's like, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep doing it. I just had an MRI 6 months ago, and everything's still fine. So now, here I am 3 years into this, and, I pulled in well over 200,000 last year. And I can't complain. Like, I love the job. I know the platforms, they suck with pay. It is what it is. But I'm a firm believer that if something sucks, don't just keep doing it. Change. You got to do something different. Like, you can't. Or at
least modify the way you do it. Even.
Correct.
Just do 1 mile trips. Just do something short and just pop them off.
100%. For me, I always try to do long trips, only because that's how I built my clients. Because I knew a trip to Miami Airport was going to pay me about $120, but I knew that person was paying $180, and I knew that I could get that person as a client and make him pay $150, and we both win-win. And my first trip in Uber one day, the guy paid $377. He got in my car. He was angry. He's like, my God, Uber's got so expensive. He's like, these black SUVs have just, and I'm like, I'm getting like 143. And I'm like, well, I said, our pay's going down, and you feel comfortable enough with a passenger, talk to him. And he goes, yeah, I paid $377. I'm like, wow, I would have done this trip for $250. He goes, okay, I'm going to cancel. You'll do it for $250? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, can I pay you right now? And I'm like, well, you pay me when we get there. He's still a client. I take him every week to the airport, twice a week. And it's $500 a week with this one. And he's like a father to me. I'm taking him for emergency room visits, you name it. And that's all it is. And I tell people, just find something in common with your passenger. That is the biggest key to rideshare. If somebody gets in your car, ask them where they're from. If they say, I'm from Indiana, oh, the Hoosiers. Like, oh, yeah, anything. Just find something in common, especially girls. I've noticed that a lot of women, when they get in the car, they're not comfortable, especially if it's a guy. And I understand, especially with everything going on. Just say something to make them comfortable. Like, hey, like, where are you from? Cool. Like, oh yeah, I've been there once. That's it. You don't have to do anything crazy. And that's, the big thing.
I was going to say, I know a driver in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He's not on a lot of platforms. Actually, he's on a handful of platforms, but he's not active at all. However, on Instagram, he's active big time. And his handle is Lifting with Larry. And
I think I used to watch he had some videos or something before, right? Like
maybe way back in the day.
Yeah.
But now it's just Instagram that he does. And basically he drives around Bowling Green and he takes pictures of all his passengers, and literally every night he posts them all.
Yep,
and it's always like 15 drunk girls smiling at him. Like, they now know Larry in Bowling Green. All of them.
I remember watching his podcast, their YouTube videos a long time ago, and they loved him. Like, they were like, oh my God, you're Larry.
They still do. I mean, everybody knows Larry at
Yep.
at the college. Everybody.
And that's a good feeling. Like, Palm Beach has 80,000 people, and I just realized that I go places and people are like, "Hey, Trent," like I run into my Publix, and I'm like, "Who are you?" And I like, even since I've been on the phone with you, I've got 9 text messages from clients. Some of them are new, so it's a great feeling for me knowing that I provided such a good service that they're willing to, call me back. Like, I have a driver, Jared, who he's on Uber, or he's on Twitter and stuff, and I met him through there, and he lives here, and I've been giving him a lot of my personal rides, and I've been trying to teach him. He's younger. I've been trying to teach him how to, interact with clients and talk to them. And he was always like, "Oh, I never talk to people. I just put them in my car," and that's great. But I told him, what separates you from any other Uber driver? Then, like, I mean, what's the difference? If you're trying to build a business, you got to do something to separate you, because, like I tell him all the time, it's very easy to go on the app and get an Uber or a Lyft. I mean, so you have to do something to stand out to make them want to call you as a personal client. Because in reality, you're going to offer them a fare that's pretty close to what they're paying with Uber and Lyft. So if I can just go on the app and get a driver at my house in 3 minutes and pay $30, but I've got to pay you 25, but I've got to text you and see if you're available. I got to tell you my flight number. I got to go through all of this. Like, it's a little more work for your passengers. So you got to do something to stand out. Like, it's not as easy as that. And he was telling me yesterday, I didn't know that you had like an iPad with all your scheduling and down to the 15-minute increments in there. And I'm like, yeah, like, how I do 140 to 170 trips a week and private trips. So, like, what else am I going to do? He goes, I just put them all together. And I'm like, you can't do that, because you miss one client, you lose the customers.
I would even add to that too, that a huge thing that I know from my like offshoots of gig work and stuff is that how quickly you get back to them is key too. Like,
very quickly.
I have a lot of people who are like, yeah, I tried what you said, and I told the guy, here's my email, I gave it to him, and I was like, he never got back to you, and they were like, well, I checked my email like a week later, and he had. And I'm like, dude, see, if you're not checking your email daily, don't give it out.
No, because they're going to be gone, and
they're not going to wait. They're probably looking for something during that week, and now you waited a week and it's already passed. They're going to be like, no, and they're never going to call you again.
That's it. And I've had clients where I've taken them 2 or 3 times, and they've been great, and then one of my drivers shows up 10 minutes late, and it's done. Like, because they're using you because they don't want to have Uber drivers cancel on them 20 times. They don't, and I've noticed what I've been getting lately is I get a lot of parents who want me to take their daughters because they trust me as a person now, and they know my story. So just, an hour before we got on the call, the same thing. I have a client who's a client of mine who's like, can you pick up my 3 17-year-olds and take them to, to the airport? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And she's like, thank you so much for taking care of them. She gave me $100 tip. It was a 20-minute trip. I made $175 on it. And she's just
now, if I know you, I'd do that. I have a son who's graduating high school. I still won't let him take an Uber. I know it's allowed now, but I've always fought that, because my thing is I would never trust the out of the gate stranger. Never.
100%.
However, some of you, if I know you, if I've met you, if I know your story, okay, that's a different situation. Then.
Yep. I have my son's 21 now. He's in the National Guard, but just about 4 months ago, I was requesting him an Uber. He had to go to drill in Orlando. So that's about a 2.5 hour trip. And I didn't want to drive him. I didn't want him to take the Tesla because it was hurricane season. There was a hurricane coming. He was actually getting activated for a hurricane. So I spent an hour and a half on the Lyft app trying to get a driver to take it. I get it. I mean, I was paying $260, so the driver's probably paying, $130, and nobody wants to do a 6-hour round trip for $130. So I would immediately text these people and say, I'm going to give you a big tip. I know everybody tells you that, but I will make sure that you get a good tip. And I had a driver put him in the car, 20 years old, and then say, Venmo me $300 now. And I'm like, excuse me? He goes, here's my Venmo. Venmo me $300 now, or I'm not taking him. I'm like, but he's in the car with you, and you've already started your trip. And he goes, yeah. And
I'm not even, there's part of me that wants to be the skeptic and say the guy was scamming you. That was the plan. And then there's the other side of me that did rideshare for long enough to know that, he might have actually been like, okay, I'll do this. And then, like, once your son got in the car, he was like, I don't want to go to Orlando.
That's yeah.
Almost like it wasn't planned, but he's like, you know what? Unless this guy's gonna give me $300, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, and I think it was more of that because like he had texted me that, and I told him, I said, well, I was going to give you a big tip, and he goes, no, I need cash up front because of the round trip, and I'm like, I'll make sure I'll give you $150 tip. No, and I get it because we've all heard the I'll tip you on the app. But don't put my son in the car and then and I said, okay, then just let him back out and cancel the trip. He goes, no, you need to cancel. And I'm like, but you have him in the car. So I said, Lyft can see everything we're texting back and forth. Like, I mean, so he just let my son back out 3 houses down from my house and threw his stuff out on the corner. So I ended up taking him that day. So like, I get it because long trips suck for a lot of people, and I understand that, but there's a better way of going about it. We should have had the conversation before he wasted the time to come pick up my son.
Exactly. You should have had that conversation before he even came out. But even at the worst case scenario, if on the drive to you, he was thinking about all that, he should have had it before anybody got in that car. That should have been a solidified deal.
And then the next guy that came got to my gate and he says, let's talk about money. I want $300. And I'm like, well, I'll give you 100. And I even told him, I said, I'll send you 100 Venmo now, and then I'll tip you 100 on the app. He goes, no. I said, then please cancel. And he goes, no, I'm just going to sit here until you cancel. And I'm like, so you're not going to get any other trips? You're just sitting there. He goes, yeah, that's fine. I don't have anything else to do. I said, you know what? I'm going to walk to the gate. We're going to have this conversation in person. And then he canceled and drove off. Yeah. But we have, like, I hate to sound bad, but we have a lot of Haitian drivers here, and a lot of them are not driving under their correct names. I got in one the other day where I told the guy, because for me to find drivers to help me, a lot of times I take Ubers and Lyft to see, if I can find somebody with good customer service, I'll, have them help me.
Like a secret shopper.
It's exactly what it is. And this guy, the first ride I did was an XL, and they brought a Nissan Rogue. And I told him, I said, this is not an XL. And he goes, no, but I got it listed as that. He goes, so just cancel. And I'm like, well, that's a scam. The second driver that I got was a brand new Tahoe, and there were 6 of us. And I said, can you move your bags out of the front seat because we need to spread out? And because it was one that had 2 and then 3 in the front. And he goes, no, you can sit in the floor. So that kind of irked me a little bit. So I just wanted to get home. So as I was in the floor, I'm looking at the picture and I'm like, Seth, is this you? No. Yeah. What do you mean? No. He goes, no, I make $10 an hour. I mean, what do you mean you make? He goes, I just got to this country 2 weeks ago. I don't even have
it wasn't his car or anything. Nope. Yeah. So I mean, to those people who are thinking $10 an hour, what's that do? I always try and mention this when I can. You got to remember that those people, like just like our migrant situation in this country right now, who are taking all these DoorDashes for $1.
Yep.
You got to remember they send all of that money home. They'll live on the street and send it all home. That kind of money there is
a lot of money.
Is 100 times what they can make in a day.
You nailed it. You nailed it. So he told me this guy owned 15 vehicles, and he has 15 drivers, and they work 24/7, and he pays everybody $10 an hour. So he's like, I don't really care if I drive or not. I'm more interested. I get to keep the tips. So any tips. So he actually had a cash tip jar in his car, and he goes, please tip me because I get to keep the tips. And I'm like, really? You don't even have a license, and you just drove me home, and you want to tip? I was like, thank you for telling me that. And with Sergio,
it's like a rideshare sweatshop.
That's what's happening here, especially in South Florida. We have a large population of Haitians, and most of them are riding under somebody else's. Like, I know it sounds bad to, pop out one certain country's dynamics, but here in South Florida, it's really bad. And,
I mean, to come to Trent's defense here a little bit, those of you who know me know I spent 2 years in Miami working for the laser company when I first started, and there is an area called Little Haiti.
Yep.
And it's actually, he's not dissing on any kind of people. It's actually dangerous to go there if you're not Haitian.
Yep, 100%.
I mean, they're not looking like, it's not like a racial thing, like, oh, it's a white person, let's kill him. But it is like they're evaluating what you're worth to steal from.
Yep.
Almost immediately. And I'm talking about a lot of them. I'm not going to mass them all, but I'm going to say a lot of them there you can tell they're scoping you.
Yep. I picked up 3 the other day. They were very young, probably close to 18, but it was a mile trip. So I was like, I don't care. And I had my iPad sitting in the middle area of my my Suburban, and the kid in front taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Look at that over there. Look at that." So I started looking. The kid in the back tried to slide my iPad right out under my arm. And I'm like, "Hello, that's mine." He goes, "Oh, I thought it was mine." And I'm like, "How do you think that's yours?" And then I got a call from Uber, actually, which was weird, asking me to respond to a message stating that I tried to steal their iPad. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So that was, opened my eyes a little bit too. I mean, but kids are kids, like that's what they do. But
Yeah.
it's, yeah, here, I mean, when I was a director of the hospital, like 90% of my employees were Haitian and good people, hardworking, but yeah, it's just a certain amount.
But exactly that. You just hit on it, because I got to know a lot of Haitian people who worked their asses off.
Yep.
And yet, so they're all good people, but they're all being so underpaid.
They are, and that's part of the problem.
I mean, because it's illegally, and I know people are familiar with, well, if they're not legal in this country, then of course they're being I'm talking about really underpaid.
Really underpaid. $10 an hour, and they're working 20 hours a day doing this, whatever. And you're talking $200 a day. And
but when it comes down to their work ethic, they'll work their asses off.
Yep, 100%. And it's and they definitely, and that's getting off on a different subject. That's one of the big issues with immigration. It's not just us being affected. Like, the people that are here illegally are in situations where they have to work for slave labor, basically, because that's what they can do. And like you said, they go to Walmart. Who benefits mostly from immigrants coming here as MoneyGram, Western Union, because all that money goes back. If you ever go to a Walmart and look at their MoneyGram, it's people sending money they made back here to their countries. Like, that's where the money's going. And it's
but even legal entry, even illegals who legally enter. I know that all sounds weird, but because you were a Border Patrol agent, you get this. But
I get it.
To our listeners, there's different levels, and there's illegals who run, and there's illegals who cross over legally cross over, but are still illegals. You got to wait like 180-day period before you can get even the partial visa, but all this stuff. But even those people, even the ones who are here legally, do the same thing. They all are sending this money back home, always. That's why they're not here because they're like, "Oh, America, the land of the free." They're here because they're like, "I can make money there and send it back home."
And that's why I laugh at politicians who are like, "Well, they're stimulating our economy." I'm like, what are we stimulating? MoneyGram, Western Union? They're not really stimulating our economy. I mean, when I was a Border Patrol agent, like, it was funny because we would have certain times of the year that they would all go back and they would take their money back and buy things and come back. But it was just they don't stimulate our economy. It's really hurting. And now, you always hear the little cliche, "Oh, well, they're taking jobs that nobody wants." Like that, when I was a Border Patrol agent, that's what you would hear. "Oh, they're just doing the hard job." Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of jobs that they're doing that Americans don't want. But at the same time,
but if they weren't here in such masses, and I'm not dissing on the system when the system works, but if they weren't here, those jobs would be taken, and those jobs would increase in price.
There you go. And now I think a lot of people are starting to see, like, because there's a lot of gig workers. What is it? 6% of the country is doing gig work or something I read. So you're talking about, I think me and Sergio were talking about the fact that Uber went from like 2 million to 3 million drivers, like in one quarter. Those are all people with work permits, temporary work permits, whatever, people buying accounts off of Facebook now or whatever they do. And it really hurts everybody else. Like you said, I mean, you used to not be able to see a DoorDash trip for $1, but now they take it and it's gone within seconds because people are grabbing it. And it hurts the people that are really trying to make a living here, who have paid taxes their whole life.
Exactly, because those of us who have a house, a family, we're like, dude, I can't live on $1 an hour. A lot of these people either live out of their car,
or with 12
some of them live in the street, or some of them live 50 people in a house and keep those cars going 24 hours a day.
That's correct. Believe it or not, some of the Haitians that had worked for me, they all were getting Section 8, but they were all somehow manipulating, saying they were living in different places. So the check would all be sent individually to this one Haitian owner, and then he would give them cash back. So it looked like he was renting out 8 properties, but in reality, he was only renting out 1. So he was getting a separate Section 8 check sent to him for each of the people living in the house. And half of them at the hospital would never want to raise from me because they would lose their social services. So if they got a $2 raise, they're going to lose their $800 a month food stamps. They're going to lose whatever. So, for them, they were making more money than most people because of the social services. And it's my wife is from Colombia. She came, we did everything legally. It did cost $20,000 to get her citizenship. It's not cheap. I get it, but it's
that's one of the things that really pisses me off. And I just have to say this because I've read a lot of articles. In fact, I read one the other day that really hit to home because there's a brain surgeon that is in Brazil or something who's been waiting for 3 years to come here. She's extremely specialized. She's amazing. And she was speaking out about illegal immigrants coming over and the way they're doing it. She's like, I'm waiting 3 years and I'm supposed to be working at Johns Hopkins.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. You're talking about like the visa. I mean,
she's a person we need to get here.
Yep. Who knows? She could solve cancer one day. And when I was a Border Patrol agent, my first journeyman, I'll never forget, he was Native American, Native Indian. And somebody was arguing with him about immigration policies. And he says, well, my people had no immigration policy. Look what happened to us. And that really set home to me because I was like, oh, that makes sense. You're right. Like, we all are immigrants. We're all from immigrants, but most of us came over legally and went through Ellis Island, our families and whatever. And it really hurts because my wife's business was a house cleaning business. So she has about 300 houses a week. So of course, when you're hiring for that type of work, a lot of people are undocumented, and they would get to the point where they were angry at her because she's like, no, I need to see papers. I need to see something. I can't just hire you. Oh, but why? Because, Maria hires us like that. And it was very frustrating. And I get frustrated because I look at Congress and the left blames the right blames the left. And nobody talks about it until election year. 3 years, nothing happens. Yeah. Election year, everything's going to get fixed. And for me, I've been there. I've done that. I've seen it. Mm-hmm. They're going about this all wrong. And I've told people before, if you want to fix, in the 80s, we had the drug wars. It didn't work, right? Because there's always going to be demand, or if there's demand, there's always going to be supply. You can arrest 3 cartel members. They're going to be replaced tomorrow. So what is happening right now? My wife would go hire somebody and she's like, yeah, I've got a temporary work permit, right? My court date is in 2029. I'm like, what? 7 years for your notice to appear? And so if I'm living in Venezuela or I'm living in Mexico and I know that I can come here and spend 7 years here legally with a work permit, have 3 babies, make a lot of money, send it all back, and then go back, why not?
That's what I was just going to say. A lot of these people go back anyway.
They go back anyway. So it's not building a wall. It's not hiring more Border Patrol agents. The way to fix it is you move 500 judges to the border. You hear these cases within 1 month. When you come here within 1 month, your case is heard. You're either deported or you're allowed your asylum. That's it. If I'm coming from Venezuela and I'm spending my whole life savings of $700 to get here, and I know that I'm only going to be here for 3 weeks and then deported, I'm not coming. But if I know that I'm coming here for 7 years and I can work and make money, I'm coming. I don't care what your border situation. If you put a wall, I'm getting over that wall.
Yeah. Or you're breaking through. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, more. And if for the people who do like the wall idea, I would say focus on drones. That's a much better way to
100%
to see what's going on.
So a normal day for me in Laredo, we had sensors. So I don't think a lot of people realize so we would average about 500 people a day that we would catch. And so the way that it worked for us was I would go out in the morning and take a car tire and I would drag the road. And then we would come back and check it every couple hours and look for footprints. So it's just like you're tracking a deer. And then some days you were catching a group of 300 or 400. We had sensors. So you would have a sensor on a fence line. And then let's say the dispatch would call you and say the 101.2 took 12 hits. Well, that could be cattle. It could be anything. Well, then 20 minutes later, the 102.3 hit. Then 20 minutes later, then you knew something was walking up that fence line where animals do not. Then we would go sit ahead of them and wait for them. So that's how it still works on the border. It's a very adequate system, but it works. I'll give you a little quick story. When I was there, I was under Clinton, switching into Bush. And so they had came out with like NAFTA was just getting started, which was crazy. And they created this policy called sitting on the X. So they would put me in a vehicle and say, this 1 square mile of your vehicle, that's your area. If somebody crosses, you honk your horn at them. That's it. You let them go. So I'll never forget, 6 months into this X program, they sent us a letter saying, wow, all of our catches have been down 60%. This is working. Well, no, it's not working. They're just going by us. We're not catching them. But for them, that was like lip service, right? That was
because then they were able to say this square didn't arrest and we had no
Correct.
arrests.
That's 100%.
This square didn't have, yeah.
And that's a way that our government can strew the facts, not lie, but strew the facts to make it seem like something to get whatever. So next thing we know, every station on the border was going to X's. And that was starting with the downfall. But it was, when I was there, if I caught somebody that was not Mexican and we had to give them a notice to appear, it was 30 days. And I'd give them a sheet of paper saying, you have a court hearing in 30 days or you'd be deported. And now it's like, I talked to friends there who are like, 7 years, 6 years. My son in the National Guard just got back from Del Rio. He was there because DeSantis sent a bunch of the National Guard there. And he's like, Dad, we're giving them like brand new iPhones. And he goes, and then they go to the pawn shop and we go on Monday, give out 10,000 phones. And on Thursday, we'd go back to the pawn shops because they would sell them. They pull them out and sell them. So, and he's like, these are brand new, like iPhone 15s. That he's like, I don't even have the phone they're given. And he said, I gave them phones and watched them just throw it away like nothing. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I'll tell another quick story that I had when I was on the border. I was sitting one day, a guy comes up, knocks on the window, and he's like, yo soy ilegal, I'm illegal, yo tengo enferma, I'm sick. And I'm like, once he tells me that, he's in my custody. I have to take him to the hospital. Fast forward, we had to send somebody there with him every day. He ended up having stage 2 cancer. He knew that. He already knew it before he came across. He spent 7.5 months doing chemo and radiation on taxpayer dollars. The day he was released, we walked him back to Mexico and he went back. Never paid a penny. And, but
which is so crazy to me because I do know people very well who now cross over to Mexico from this side to go get dental work done.
Yep.
For half the price. We're going over there for half the price. They're coming here and getting it for free.
But if your mother or grandmother was really sick and she went to the hospital, I mean, when I had to have my I had my aneurysm, they wanted to do an angiogram and I was on Obamacare. It sucked. And the doctor, they called me 2 days before and they said, okay, it's going to be $6,700 out of pocket because of your deductible. And I'm like, okay, can I just make payments? And they're like, no, you got to pay it all up front. We take credit cards or whatever. But they said, if you're illegal, we can pay for it. Do you have a social? I almost said no. But, and then my wife's ex-cousin just came to this country. I don't know. She got a tourist visa, came and had a baby here for free and then went back to Colombia. I mean, she went, did all the paperwork, had the baby and went right back to Colombia. So the baby's American citizen, it's living in Colombia. So it's insane.
Yeah. Before we switch back to the rideshare part that I do want to hit on too, but I do want to mention something that I was reading that I kind of already had this theory in my head, at least on some level, that this must be going on, but I didn't know it was going on this directly because you can get on. I've said it enough times, so I'm not giving away any crazy information, but you can get on Facebook Marketplace and buy a DoorDash account. Yep. They range between $70 and $150, depends. I don't know what it depends on. But there was a story that led me down a rabbit hole that I found other stories. And then I talked to a reporter here in Denver who's at the Denver Post, who kind of expanded on this story. There are now, like, the one example I'll give because it just made mainstream media last week was there was a Turkish illegal that crossed over, paid the cartel $6,500 to get him across. They got him across. When he got across, they dropped him and 20 other people at a trailhead where a bus would be coming, and they gave him a phone. On that phone was a DoorDash account.
Wow.
And he took the bus from the trail to Santa Monica. The minute he got there, he was able to start dashing. And it was not his account. It was not his name. Nothing.
Insane.
And then last week, I started seeing articles out about people claiming, hey, because it's tax time. By the way, guys, better have filed, or you better have filed an extension today.
Don't remind me. Mine's in the process.
But then he was saying, now I'm going to go live with my friend in Santa Monica, and I'm hoping to make a bunch of money on DoorDash. Okay, well, that's not even your account. Now I started seeing stories that said that there's people saying, wait, what are you talking? I've never worked for DoorDash. What are you talking about? What do you mean I made 20 grand on it last year?
It's insane.
And I mean, I guess a lot of people didn't think outside the box that this kind, like they were just thinking, well, how are they getting all these fake accounts on Facebook? I'm sure they're not all this way, but of course we shouldn't be shocked that some of them, a handful, a decent amount maybe even are.
Yep.
They're just straight up being stolen. It's from identity theft.
And you wonder also too, when these people buy these accounts, I had told Sergio, what keeps that person from logging in and changing, like, let's say you make $1,000 one week and then you're under somebody else's account and that guy's like, well, that's my account. Let me log in and just take all his money. At the end of the week, go change his stuff. It's his account. I mean, and all your money could disappear and you're like, what happened?
Yeah, but for the blank accounts that people who have a W-2 or a salary position and never, ever will work in the gig economy, never have, never will. And then they're now getting these like taxes that say, hey man, you made 16,000 on DoorDash. No, I didn't. I would never work DoorDash and I didn't do it.
And they're like, well, you did.
So those articles are out there now. You guys can go look them up. I mean, go look up, illegal DoorDash accounts, taxes. Just put that into Google and see what you get.
Yep.
I mean, there's, and it's mainstream media too. Once it's mainstream media, it's beyond true because when it's stories like those, because it takes a long time, even once they know it, to print those stories.
Yep. 100%.
And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but I guess I'm just pointing out that, people are saying that, oh, my market's just, it's dead. And I did a thing on that just this weekend, but yeah, but it's, yes, there's been oversaturation in rideshare, delivery, all these places for a long time, but now it's a new level of oversaturation, and it's a new level of oversaturation where they're willing to take anything.
Yep.
They're not like us. They're not like contemplating, does that make sense to me? They're just grabbing them. Yep. I'll take it. Like a $1 ride looks like a ton to them because they some of them make it $3 in a day where they're from.
That's correct. Yep.
So, I mean, it's such a nightmare. One thing I do want to touch on, because I know that you mentioned this to me, and I want to, you mentioned it before the extension happened, was the Minneapolis situation.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, I kept saying, listen, these Uber and Lyft, or Minneapolis needs to really look into Austin, Texas, and what happened there. They really need to look into the fact that Uber and Lyft left Austin for a year. And there were three startups. And that was at a time when there were barely any startups in the country for rideshare. But there were 3 in Austin testing their product, and they could not do it without the giants. A lot of people are baffled by that. Like, well, how? If the giants left, how did they? Because people didn't trust these companies. They didn't really have the faith in them yet. And they're like, well, how are they any better than Uber and Lyft? I'm going to get a car, or I'm going to figure out something else. Or they just went to other methods. But somehow all of those companies did way worse when Uber and Lyft left.
Yeah.
And they couldn't hold it. And then the city ends up begging them back.
Yeah,
so to jump to the Minneapolis thing, Minneapolis tried this last year. The governor had to use his first veto ever in his career to say, no, we're not going to pass that city council ordinance in Minneapolis. And then this year, the same thing. It passed in city council, and the mayor said no. And they said, you know what? This year, we're just going to go ahead and do it. And they set this, I'm just kind of setting the stage for people, because they set this amount that's pretty high. I mean, it's $1.91 for a minute and a mile. If you're doing 60 miles an hour, so we'll just add them together kind of thing. Like, so if you're doing 60 miles an hour, a minute and a mile are at the same rate. So it was about $1.91 coming up from about 109. Well, Lyft offered to meet them halfway. Yeah. And they said, no, we're not negotiating. And as of May 1st, this is what it's going to be. Well, now they're still not negotiating, but they extended it for 2 months. So it'll be, what is it? It was May 1st. Now it's going to be July 1st.
Yep.
And so Uber and Lyft's immediate statement was like, so exactly what you'd expect, just right in your face too. Like, well, then we'll stay till July 1st. You know, it was at first, we'll stay till May 1st and then we're out of here. And then now it's like, well, we'll stay till July 1st. I don't know what these are proving. I am, you know, I'm all for people getting paid better. I am not for this intervention where they say this is the price.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
The better solutions are, you know, I mean, like you're in Florida. I've had taxi drivers on the show before who I think it was even Palm Beach. One of the drivers is now up in he's like a 50-year veteran. He's up in New York City where he's originally from, but he worked there for like 10 years. And he used to say, man, if we went over the capacity on a Friday night, our taxi firm was fined so heavy that it would almost like it would actually impact the business on a month-to-month basis, not just that day. Yep. And so I'm all for, dude, cap it. You know, I mean, again, I understand that there was a time when oversaturation was like, that's where it's at. You need to have oversaturation. And it was like, if Lyft put a car every 3 blocks, then Uber said, well, that's not good enough. Put a car every block. And so, and there was a time when there was that kind of volume. Now there's not. And I think even these companies, especially delivery, but let's focus on rideshare, realize that. And they're like, even they're saying we have too many drivers.
Yeah.
Like, because the volume isn't the same. So to that, I say, you know, like, I don't really understand, you know, again, Sergio and I have talked about this on many occasions, and where we sync up is the treatment of drivers. Where we don't sync up is sometimes is how we get there.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that, again, Sergio's like we've been praising him through this, but Sergio's somebody I can have a conversation with without being argumentative. Like, I can talk to him and he's not going, no, you're wrong, Steve. You know, it's more like, okay, I see what you're saying. You know, and if you can't have those kind of conversations, I don't know what you expect to gain, because if you're so hard-headed that you go unlocked, nothing's coming out of that. That's like Congress.
And I think that's what is happening, because you get on Twitter or X, whatever, and everybody has different opinions. And I see Uber and Lyft drivers arguing with each other. And I'm like, why? We're on the same side. Like, you know, and I think a lot of it comes down to, there's a group of Uber Lyft drivers who all they care about is the money. They don't care about anything else. And like, I'm getting shafted. Well, yeah, you are. But there's other things that go into it. Like, for me, less government is better. Our government runs one social program, Social Security, and it's bankrupt. So why do we want them involved in everything else, right? And like, yes, drivers need to make more money, but there's got to be a different way than just saying, okay, Uber, Lyft, this is what's going to happen. Because now every driver in Minneapolis is going to feel that. Like, if I'm a full-time driver in Minneapolis, I don't have a job anymore, because Uber, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, Uber has the upper hand. Like, they do. They're the ones who sacrificed. I hate to say that I'm freaking defending Uber. But they're the ones. You're
not defending them. You're just speaking some truth that, like it or not, it's true.
They're the ones that put up all the money in the beginning. They're the ones who took the risk. They're the ones who, you know, like, look, I went through hell trying to get my my commercial insurance, my licensing. Uber, I just sign up and go through a quick background and I have it. So they make it easy for you. What other job can somebody with not even a high school degree just go out and have a car and start working? Like, I mean, it's nowhere else, right? I mean, so they have made it easy for us. So there are positives to that. My big thing is, like, when cities come in and they're like, we mandate that you have to do this. Well, it's not as black and white as you think, because, like, for me, I drive a black car service. So if you're saying, okay, $1.45 a mile, whatever, what happens to the black car drivers? What happens to whatever else? I mean, am I going to just be getting paid the same as a person driving a Yugo or whatever, right? I mean, and I don't know. Like, I don't like how Minneapolis did it. Like, I get that they're trying whatever, something different, but you got to work with Uber. My biggest thing with Uber and Lyft is, like, more than the money, I feel like the safety is a big issue. Like, you know, Sergio posted the thing where the guy got shot and the lady's name was Precious, right? Like, that's got to stop. Like, that's something that Uber and Lyft can stop tomorrow. I had one, I don't even want to say it, but it was like, it was big pussy liquor or something the other day. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How does this get on the app? And it's not a safe neighborhood. And I'm like, I'm not picking this up. But, you know, somebody that maybe doesn't speak English so well will pick it up. And who are you picking up? Like, if I'm going through a background if I'm going through a background, then just verify their ID. How hard is it? Like, that's the frustrations I get with Uber and Lyft, because it's like, yeah, they'll put out a whole press release on, we're doing this to protect the passenger, this, but our drivers, whatever. Like,
And if you guys look, I need you guys to understand this. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but when you see a story come out that says we put out a safety feature, like they've put out the in ride recordings five times now, and every time then it disappears, but it comes back. But whenever it does come out, my challenge to you is Google it, or Google Uber, look at news, and then if the whole first page is that, go to page 4 on the Google search, and you might find that there's a story being buried.
That's a good point, actually.
Because they often like release these at times when there's something they really don't want you to see.
That's actually a good point. I never thought about that, actually.
Especially like if it's just 1 or 2 stories being run by a couple publications on the page of on page 1 of a Google search, that's different. But if you're seeing every article is that, dig deeper, because I mean, it just you're gonna find something going on. But yeah, I agree with you. I just think that part of the problem is, I mean, again, Uber and Lyft we've seen them deploy things. They could deploy facial recognition on every time you sign on, but why would they? Because then they're going to kill off all the people who are operating illegally.
I had a quick story. I was down in Lauderhill one night. I pulled up dark road, guy, big 6'4" dude standing. I rolled down I rolled down the window and I'm like, "You're Ronaldo?" And he's like, and he just makes a sound. He ends up getting in the back of the car, laying down, and it's a 1 mile trip to Wawa. And he tells me, "Hey, don't take a wrong turn or you're going to pay for it." And I'm like, "What?" And the guy was carrying the umbrella. It was not raining. So we pull up to Wawa and I'm like, "Hey, it's time to go, man. It's time to go." And he's like, "Don't tell me what to do." And so I always keep chargers in the back of the car. He pulls the charger out and I'm like, "Hey, that's my charger." And he goes, "Not anymore." And I'm like, so I pull the phone off of my dash and I start like acting like I'm texting Uber, because I was feeling, he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm reporting that you stole my charger so they can charge you $75. He takes the charger around and hits me in the back of the head with it, just slings it around and hits me with it and starts shaking my seat. So I hold on my horn, start blowing my horn, because there's a security guard walking in front of the Wawa. So the security guard car starts walking over, like seeing what's happened. He gets out of the car. Security guard's like, "He's not allowed here. He assaulted one of our cashiers like last week. He's got a trespassing." I'm like, "It's not my problem." He gets out of the car, takes the security guard, shoves him out of the way, walks into Wawa. I drive off. I report to him to Uber, and they're like, "Oh, we're sorry you had a bad experience. You won't be paired with him again." Dude, the guy hit me upside the head. They're like, "Do you have a dash cam? Can you send us?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Great. You won't be paired with him again. Sorry for your, like, that's not, this guy's going to go get another Uber in 20 minutes and he's going to hurt somebody. Like, that's, don't just not pair me. But they're never going
to deactivate a customer, though. We know that.
And that's my issue. Though. My issue is like, it comes down, and these are just common sense. Like, we look at Congress not being able to pass anything because they're a bunch of morons, but like, come on, common sense. If this guy, I tell you, I can send you a dash cam of him assaulting me, never let him back in another Uber. But no, he's going to go hurt somebody else. What if I was a female driver and he decided just to rape somebody, right? I mean, we're having drivers killed all the time now. I mean, and it's just, it could be prevented. Like, and I get on Twitter and I hear people, "Oh, well, you don't have to drive it. Go get some skills." And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is, I don't expect to get hit in the back of the head driving somebody from point A to B, and that shouldn't happen.
Well, I mean, on the same note too, I have to add this, that like, look, I mean, there's guys who are walking in the New York City subways and walking down the pathways and punching women in the face people out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course that gets,
I mean, it's just a violent situation right now, and it's very heated, and there's some mental health issues that are not being tended to ever since the pandemic.
Yep.
But I got to ask you as we wrap it up here, because I need to know your opinion on this, because you've been a Border Patrol agent. You've had health concerns that seem to be being fixed by just having a good attitude and being positive, which I honestly hardcore believe in that. Anyway, like no matter what a doctor tells you, if you can get your head set around it, you might be able to tell the doctor you're wrong.
I did. Positivity heals. I tell people that all the time. So
So, but my question to you as we wrap it up here is that if, okay, there's legislation to pass dollar amounts, and then if you do, like, let's say Minneapolis did go through at the $1.91, we know that they're going to throttle you. We know you're never going to make that minimum wage that they're talking about. They're not going to let you have a full active hour. They're going to let you have 65% of an hour, all this kind of stuff to scatter it out amongst other people too, to still keep them like wanting more and thinking that they can get more. Well, okay, we got that. We got all these illegals on the account. We have, and I mean, and they're not even on their own accounts. These are not illegals who have a status. They are illegals or gotaways, and they absolutely should not be on the account. Sometimes it might not even be the same color person that the account belongs to.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's very clearly not them. Like you were saying, they don't have licenses. So I know Miami's a whole different animal, but like nationwide, and I know nobody has the exact solution, but you know, if you were put in charge of like solving this, at least like a first step, like, okay, well then what's your plan? Like, what would you say to legislators or whatever who were actually listening?
For me, it's, verification of riders. Like, I mean, driver's license, some ID. I mean, if you need an ID to get into a club, you need an ID to get in a passenger's car. That's the first thing. The second thing is like, it needs to be a joint effort here. Like Uber and Lyft need to be on board with whatever we're trying to do. We can't force them into doing something because we see what's happening in Minneapolis. No matter how much we want to, if you force a large company, they're leaving. Like they could leave the United States and still make a profit. Like
Uber could, Lyft would be done.
Lyft will be done. Yeah. But so somehow we have to figure out a way. And I think Sergio was talking to me one day when he had David Risher on, and people were getting mad at him because he wasn't just bashing David. He was like, being nice. If we have to do that, like right now, since they have the upper hand, we have to like basically tell Uber, Lyft, like, I don't know, like I guess we have to be nice to them. Like we have to allow them to be the ones. Like, what is it like when you're married, your wife's mad at you, but you have to, about something, you got to make it seem like it was her decision to do something. Like, I think that's what we need to do with Uber and Lyft. Like,
happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, exactly. We got to come out with something where Uber says, oh, this was our idea, right? I mean, for so long, we complained about not seeing where we were going, that type of stuff. So we got upfront fares, which sucks for the upfront fare part, but it's nice knowing where we're going. So we got half of that. So now we just got to give a little more. And I don't know, like, I think David is actually doing a better job with Lyft lately. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's different markets. Like Uber seems to be about profits over the last 8 months more than anything, which we also have to understand they are a shareholding business. Their main concern is not us. It's not the passenger. It's their shareholders. And it doesn't matter what we do. Their shareholders are going to be their priority. I think Lyft and David, like he's made some changes, like the pay things. It seems to be a little better. And it seems like David's a little more responsive, especially on like X, things like he seems to be listening a little more. And that's what we need in it, right? We need to get them to listen to us. But we can't just go demand that we deserve $3 an hour or $4 an hour. We can't. I mean, I love the rideshare professor. He's a great guy. But like the protests, like
but I think, I agree with you, and I got to defend Torsten a little bit, but where the anger comes from with Torsten is he's owed a lot of money.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
He's owed a lot of money. So he's first of all, forget all of the things he wants to get accomplished. He's very angry at these companies.
Yeah, he is. And I get that. I'm going to start driving while I talk, but that's fine. He's a great guy. Like I've texted back and forth with him, and he really cares about the drivers. He cares about everything. Like it's, but more like the protest, I just felt like was kind of useless, I guess. Like, I know we got to start somewhere.
And these companies love it. They see that, first of all, a news outlet won't even go out there to cover it if you only have 50 people. They're gonna be like, dude, we're not gonna come out there. But if they do and only show 50 people showed, these companies love it. They're like, nobody showed.
You made the best point I heard on your podcast when you said it actually probably had the opposite effect, because the companies are like, look, they went for months trying to get this protest together, and this is what they got, and it didn't even faze us. So I think it actually had the different effect. You know, I know quite a few politicians. I've talked to politicians about this, and you know, what we also have to realize is, yeah, rideshare is different, but it's not as easy for Congress just to say we're going to force Uber and Lyft to do this, because what happens is when they do that, it opens a bag of worms for other companies, not just rideshare. We're talking about you go and start mandating a company that they got to do something. Then what happens when they're like, well, Walmart has to do that now because, you know, Uber and Lyft did it. Like, it's not as just simple as just saying rideshare, this is this, because we have a constitution, we have laws, you know, what stops Congress from going after small businesses now and, you know, not Uber and Lyft and saying, you got to pay this, you got to do this. You know, my thing with Minneapolis, okay, they're trying to start their own rideshare company there by the city, whatever. But what happens when they mandate them that they got to pay $2 a mile, and that company's just getting started and it doesn't have the funds that Uber and Lyft has? They're going to go bankrupt. And you made a great point when Uber and Lyft left Austin, everything went down because think about it. If you go to the store and you see ice cream that you're like, oh, I know Ben and Jerry's, but then I have this other ice cream here that's cheaper, but it's, you know, whatever, made of dirt. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm not buying that, even if it's a little more expensive, because I don't know that product. It's the same as Uber and Lyft. Uber's been around long enough now that I can go mention Uber in almost any country and people knows what it is. And it's, so I don't think we're doing the right thing. I understand why they did that in Minneapolis, but it's, for me, in my own worthless opinion, it's not the right thing. And you also affected, you know, 60-70% probably who did not want that to happen, because maybe there were people making good wages in Minneapolis, and now they're like, what am I going to do for a job? I don't have a job. They're leaving. You know, what am I going to drive? And that's a shame, because like when we do this, we got to think of all of us, not just some of us. And
yes.
you know,
and that's what Sergio and I were trying to get across at the town hall, and all the things we're doing, that again, even if we don't see eye to eye on everything, we do see that it's the greater good. It's not, listen, how do we get you money?
Yep, that's it.
It's how do we get this so that people are being paid correctly?
And if you gave me a choice and told me that Uber and Lyft could raise our pay 20 cents a mile, or they would start paying out benefits if some of us happen, I would take the benefits. I would take, you know, my big thing is, I've always said that Uber and Lyft, if somebody gets killed in the line of duty, they should have to give some sort of survivor benefits to, you know, the family. It doesn't have to be a lot, at least pay for the funerals, help out, do something, you know. And but even with that, like, you start forcing companies to do that, what is it? It opens examples for other companies. You know, once a court case has been decided, people will use that court case for other court cases. It's no different with this. Like, I'm a big fan of government staying out of business. Like,
100%.
I don't like it. And because then all of a sudden, you know, government got into baseball a few years ago and this, and I'm like, why? Like, you know, they're like, don't, like, because you're just setting precedences for other stuff. And like, this Minneapolis thing has big consequences for the rest of the country. It's not about Minneapolis, because Uber and Lyft pulls out, and at the beginning I thought they were joking, but I think now they really are.
And I think they'll, I mean, and even I think Minneapolis knows they'll pull out. Otherwise they wouldn't have extended it 2 months.
Yep, that's correct. And now, you know,
but they're also not negotiating with them. So what are they expecting? Uber and Lyft to go, you know what, we'll comply with these. They're not going to comply. They now just saw you weaken.
Yep. It's like that. You draw the line in the sand. I mean, like with Biden with Iran, don't. Well, they did. Okay, don't. Well, don't go any further. Don't do it. Or go on here, don't. And then once they see they can continue to do it, then they're like, why are we going? I mean, we're not going to listen to you. So, you know, Minneapolis, maybe it wasn't a good market for Uber too. I mean, I don't know what their numbers were, but who knows? Maybe they were like, hey, we can pull out of here and it not hurt us, and we can set an example. Now, of course, somewhere like New York City, Los Angeles, whatever, like that would be a different story if New York, you know, if Uber pulled out. Like that would, you know, hurt their pockets. But somewhere like Minneapolis, like, what is it, 900,000 people, maybe 800,000, like the metro area. So, you know, Uber has the upper hand. We just, as drivers, we do have to come together, but I just see drivers fighting with each other all the time. Even when I did a podcast with Sergio, people bashing me, like, and I'm like, look, we're just trying to help each other. But I'll tell drivers, like, don't wait on Uber and Lyft to change. Just like I tell people, it doesn't matter who the president is. Your life, your individual day-to-day does not change. It's up to you to make yourself. And I hear people all the time, well, I can't make it because Trump's not president and everything's too expensive. And I'm like, no, you can't make it because you're not making it. Like,
right. And to that point too, I agree with you. It doesn't matter who's president because there's always going to be downfalls. But to be honest, like, you can't say I'm a rideshare driver who can't make it. That means everybody, no matter what they're doing, can't make it.
Yeah. And
W-2's salary, it doesn't matter. Nobody can make it.
And I tell people all the time, I had a rideshare driver the other day in Palm Beach telling me, I'm only making $500 a week. I'm working 50 hours a week. And I'm like, what time of the day are you working? He's like 10 in the morning until like 6 in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, that's like dead hours other than like 4 to 6. And he's like, well, that's when I want to work. Well, okay. Right. But that's when you want to work. Or when you make the most money, you go out Friday nights, Saturday nights, whatever. And like for me, when I am doing Uber and Lyft, I go out at 5 in the morning. I take a break between like 10 and 1 because it's dead. And then I go back out to like 4. I know I don't make as much money as some other people at night, but that's my choice. But but if people want to make money, the money's there. They just have to be smart about it. They have to be,
willing to pivot, willing to move their market. You got to be willing to change and adapt at all times. If you're in it for the money, you got to be willing to change.
And I know you probably have 600 apps on your phone because I've heard you talk about everything from Para to this, that, this. So, and that's the thing. Like, I see a guy yesterday. He's like, "Oh, I just do Uber." Well, why don't you do these others? I don't know. Well, what does it hurt having Lyft on at the same time? Well, then I would hurt my acceptance rate. Who cares? My acceptance rate is 4%. 4%. I think they got the lowest in the country. But it's but that's what you have to do. Like, if you get a Walmart delivery, go do it. If you do this, like, and honestly, that breaks it up. Like, if you have 6 different apps going, I mean, at least you're not just doing the same thing all day. You're doing something different. And my biggest advice for rideshare drivers is, if you're not going to do personal trips, that's your business, but try to talk and make connections with whatever it is. Like, my job as a hospital director became because I picked up a regional manager with a company, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody as a director. Would you be interested?" And I went to the interview, and I did it because I picked him up with Uber and Lyft. So you never know who you're going to connect with. And it's just, people get narrow-minded on things, and they think that this is the only way. And it's not. Gig work has exploded over the last 6 years. I would have never thought 7 years ago about doing gig work as a full-time job, but like, I mean, I made $70,000 without my private trips, just Uber and Lyft, and I did not work that much. I mean,
that's what as we wind it down here, that's what I do have to say. That, listen, like, if you're saying I can't make what I made on Uber anymore or whatever, in a way, it's kind of good, because now there's so many different apps you can work. That's the direction it's going. We'll obviously have to have you back on, because I could talk to you for a long time, but I think it'd be fun to have a panel with Sergio, me, you, Tony the Driven Dad, and Vinny Coos.
Yeah, you got to throw Kim on there, because I love Kim. Kim, shout out to you. I love
Kim hates rideshare, though.
I know she. I love her.
Like, she doesn't even, when she was out here, she doesn't even like taking it. So.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, absolutely. I'm free anytime. It's my therapy talking. I love it. I drive Sergio crazy all the time. So, like, yeah, I love it. Like, it's, I want to help other people. Like, I know in the goodness of my heart, I maybe have 3 years left to live, even if everything's fine. I know, because I have autoimmune conditions. So I just want to pass this on to people. Like, I'm not selling anything to people. I was getting bashed like, "Oh, what are you selling?" And I'm like, "I'm not selling nothing." But I feel like I found a niche, and I was blessed enough to be very successful, and I just want to help people. I mean, but people have to be receptive to being helped. Like, they have to, and a lot of people aren't. They're stuck in their ways, and they're just like, "No, I refuse to do this," or this, that, this. Well, okay, then that's fine, but you're just not going to be as successful as you wanted to be. And I mean, look at the founders of Uber. They took a chance, and now they moved on. So, like, you got to take some chances in life, right? And there's a good market here, man. It's it's there. You can go to any market and make decent money if you know what you're doing. So, and God bless the fact that we have, as a gig worker, we have time right now at 3:00 to get on and do a chat. And you know, if I was working a W-2 job at the hospital right now, I'd be killing myself trying to figure out, you know, what I'm, you know, even going to take a time to take a 5-minute break. And we have to realize when we complain about the pay and the fact that they're killing us, that we have that freedom to go home to see our kids. We have that freedom to make phone calls. If I need to go get something done in the middle of the day, I can do it. You know, I don't have to ask off if I want to go on vacation. You know, and those have to count for something, because W-2 employees.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and I think we forget that fact. We forget that fact. You know, I'll give a shout out to Mo on X. He's the grumpy guy all the time, but he does make some good points, and you know, he makes good points about the fact that, like, you know, we are what we are, but like, I mean, oh man, I mean, I've worked my entire life, and to be able just to drive to Miami while I talk to you and pick somebody up and make $300 for the next hour is just like insane to me. Like, and then go file your taxes, hide your money from the IRS. No, just kidding. Don't say that. Not now with all the new IRS agents. Don't follow that advice. But yeah, I mean, it's great. And I meet so many cool people. Like I said, I've had everybody from Donald Trump Jr., Roger Stone. I've had Matt Gaetz. I've had Peyton Manning. You know, Darius Butler. I've had all sorts of really cool people. I met George Lucas, my hero. So I'm a big Star Wars fan. Got a little autograph that says, "May the Force be with you." So, like, I would have never done that working at the hospital. So, you know, so yeah, I just stay positive. That's my biggest advice to people. Negativity will bring you down. Negativity makes you not sleep. Negativity makes you sick. And if I can live with 6 months to live and be positive, anybody can. You know, I always tell people all the time that bad things happen, but bad things don't last forever. So, you know, we all just go through cycles, and just be positive. I lost both. My mother died at 39. My dad was 43. My sister was 31. My other brother was 33, and my other brother was 38 when they died. So I lost my entire family from autoimmune diseases early. And so, you know, and they were my best friends. So, you know, it's, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And it's just stay positive. Like, it's it. Like, positivity is the greatest thing in the world.
I think that's a perfect thing to end on. So thank you, Trent, for your time. Listeners, as always, guys, you know, be safe, earn smart, value your time, and be good to each other.
She was just a baby.